Let's start. Can we start?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's begin from the last album. The fact you got back together with the Pristine lineup after 24 years since Pacific Age means this is a significant event. What has changed among you and towards your own music since then?
Well, obviously, our situation has changed a great deal. I suppose the biggest things that happened was the original band finished at the end of the 80s. I continued on my own as OMD for a few years, but then I stopped in 96. And I think then it was obvious that, everything with indie rock and Oasis and Brit-pop, an 80s synthesizer band was out of fashion and out of date, it seemed. So it was time to stop. I was hitting my head against a wall. But then things changed again.
Yes, hardly changed.
Yeah, and we started to get people talking to us that, would we play live, would we do TV, and would we produce records for people, because electro was starting to become cool again. And so finally we did a TV show. We all got together, just for fun, just to go and do it and say hello to everybody again. And it was the first time for 17 years we'd all been in the same place. And we just liked it. We had a great time, and we said, hey, listen, we're asked if we want to play concerts. Shall we do some concerts? So we said, sure, yeah, we did. Let's do some concerts. So we put 9 concerts on sale. They sold out, and we ended up doing 40 that year.
Were you, Paul and you still friends during these years, or not?
Yes, we were. We never had a big, terrible fight. So we were still friendly. In fact, actually, Paul worked with me on a couple of songs on the last Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark album in 96.
So, today there are many bands who take inspiration and play synth pop. I'm thinking to Junior Boys or to Hot Chip. Do you know these bands?
Yeah.
What do you think about them? What kind of reaction do you have when you hear songs sounding like OMD's ones?
Yes, it's interesting. It's not surprising. Popular music is old now. There's nothing new. It's all been done before. A few years ago we had all the bands sounding like the 60s and the 70s.
Yes.
And now that's been rejected again, and everybody wants to sound like the early 1980s.
Fortunately.
Well, fortunately for me, yeah, I'm not complaining.
And for me.
Yeah. I think, the problem is, and it's always the same, you have a few bands who have a unique and special way of doing things. And, for example, I think Hot Chip is one of those bands.
Yes.
But now that electro is back in fashion again, there are people who, just like 30 years ago, they don't have anything to say. They're not unique or special. They just want to be in the music industry. And so they're just making electro music. So, there's some great electro music. We like Hertz, Villanar, Mirrors. Robin is fantastic.
Okay.
But there's also, there's other new electro bands, and it's not good. But then that's always the same.
Yeah. But you think that your is a synth revival, or is there anything new in your sound in the last album?
In our sound on the History of Modern album, we looked at our own history, and we recognized that the best music we made was our first 4 albums. We had a distinctive and unique sound then, and we were making songs. We had something to say, and we were saying it in our own style. We always tried to do something different, but sometimes different is not always better. And in the late 80s, the OMD was not so good, if I'm honest. So I think we wanted to make something that sounded like...
But the Sugar Tax was a good album.
No, Sugar Tax was good, but Crush and Universal were not the best.
Yes, I think I agree with you.
And Pacific Age and Liberator also. They were not the best. Yeah, Sugar Tax was a good album, good music. But I think it was important that we wanted to... Our most distinctive sound, if we wanted to come back, then the important thing was that we should sound like ourselves, not like anybody else. And the most distinctive Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark sound was the early sound. So we wanted to do that, but we had to make sure that we were not just doing a kind of retro nostalgia record. We had to make one that the production technique, the musical styles and qualities, it sounded like 2010. So that was the difficult balance we had to do. We had to use sounds that sounded like traditional OMD, but make the record sound like it was 2010. This was the problem for us.
Yes, for everybody, I think. So historically, you are researchers of sound with synthesizers. Don't you find that present technology is limiting this search and tends to flatten the sound? I refer mainly to the work in the studio. Doesn't one run the risk of being tempted by the shortest way, in a manner of speaking? Because today everything it's easier, no?
Some things are easier, and some things are more complicated. In the early days, you didn't have so many instruments. You didn't have a computer that was full of soft sample synths. But, in some ways that was easier because you didn't have too many alternatives. It was like, okay, bass drum, boom, 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 snare drum, bass sound, okay, bass sound, go, finished, Now it's like, okay, bass drum, well, I have 3,000. Which bass drum shall we have? And of course, people still have the same thing. They go, you got a computer and you put the samples in and and it's like, you press the button and the computer writes the song. I said, no, it fucking doesn't. I wish it did. And we had this 30 years ago. People said, the machine is writing the music. It's like, no, it isn't. We are writing the music. We use machines, but we are writing the music.
Yes, of course.
The synthesizer does not have a button that says hit single.
So, Andy, both Paul and you sang as the lead vocalist, the great OMD's hits. Then I've always wondered, how did you decide who would had sung the next one hit?
Okay, well,
it was this kind of dualism, or not?
Actually, it was very simple. If we wrote a song together, or if I wrote a song on my own, I sang it.
Okay.
If Paul sang a song that he wrote himself, he sang it. So, on every album there would be, most of the songs were together. Yeah. 1 or 2 songs I wrote, and maybe 1 song Paul wrote. And if Paul wrote the song on his own with nothing from me, he also sang it. So that's why you had Souvenir, Forever Live and Die. Yeah. These songs Paul wrote himself with nothing from me, so he sang them also. It wasn't like, okay, it's your turn now, okay, then it's next, it's me, now I...
Okay, everything was clear, huh? Okay. It's only you singing in the new album, isn't it?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. So what did it mean being electronic pop pioneers in the punk era in England? Tell me something about that period, exciting period.
It was very exciting.
Yeah.
You have to remember, Paul and I, we created and discovered our alternative music in 1975 when we discovered Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do our alternative electronic music before punk.
Mm-hmm.
But when punk came along, it gave us an opportunity because there was somewhere that we could play that would encourage somebody to do some different music. So we had a wonderful opportunity in Liverpool. We had a fantastic club called Eric's Club. And we invented the band just so we could play one night in Eric's Club. That's it. Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark was just for one concert only. But then we got offered another concert, and then we got offered a record on Factory, and then we signed to a major label with Virgin, and I must admit, Paul, it was a big, big surprise to me and Paul, because we never expected to have hits. We never wanted to be pop stars. We were just in his mother's house on Saturday afternoon when his mother went out to work. We just got together and played our weird music. Our friends thought our music was shit. So we didn't think it was really going to be pop. We just thought it was weird and nobody liked it, so we just did it ourselves. So it was a big surprise when 3 years after we started writing songs, we released Electricity, and as a single, we wrote Electricity when we were 16. It was, and everybody said, "Hey, this is great." And Tony Wilson at Factory Records says, "This is future pop music."
Yeah,
we were like, "Really?"
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a really incredible and amazing time. The only problem was that most of the music journalists hated it because they were very old, cliched rock and roll journalists. And what we were doing, and then what the Human League and then Depeche Mode were doing, they hated it. This is not music. This is not real. This is not manly and sweaty and honest. And they did not get it, and they hated it. And, now, people say now, oh, the classic OMD, Enola Gay, the classic Architecture and Morality. If you look at the reviews from 30 years ago...
It was terrible.
It was terrible, yeah. But now it's a classic.
Since there is a song in the new album dedicated to Kraftwerk, isn't it? RFWK, okay? I'd like to know something about their history and yours. Are you and Carl Bartos still friends? You collaborated with him, no?
Yeah, actually, I sent him an MP3 of RFWK, and in fact, just a few weeks ago, Wolfgang Fleur sent me an email saying, "Hey, I heard your new record on the radio." So I know those guys. I haven't seen them for a long time, but we still sometimes send emails and sometimes talk, and I'm hoping that they will come and see us when we play on tour in November in Germany. I don't talk to Ralph Hutter or Florian, and I mean, really, when you think about Kraftwerk, actually, the big man, the man in Kraftwerk is actually Ralph Hutter. Ralph Hutter is...
What do you think about his own project? Because he's alone now as Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Well, Ralph always wanted Kraftwerk to be the perfect machine. Now, for me, I actually could see there was something very beautiful and very human about Kraftwerk. Everybody in the 1970s thought Kraftwerk was a machine. you compare Kraftwerk to the other rock music of the 70s, they looked and sounded like a machine. Yeah. But if you really listened, you could hear the people in the band. You could hear the beautiful melodies. You could hear that the playing was not totally perfect. You can hear there's melancholy and romance. Yeah. And people never understood this. There was a beautiful romantic humanity in Kraftwerk. I mean, Trans-Europe Express, Neon Lights are very, very beautiful romantic songs.
I perfectly agree with you.
You know, but now with Ralph, with Carl gone and Wolfgang gone and now Florian gone, and now when you listen to a song like Aerodynamic or Vitamin, and when you see them on stage, there is almost no humanity. Yeah. It is like a perfect machine, and personally, I don't like it so much.
Okay. Is your friend too, Ralph, or not?
I have met Ralph 3 times, that's all. You know, and it was very difficult for me because it was like meeting God. And I think perhaps Ralph is a strange man. You know, I think trying to talk to Ralph Hutter can be quite difficult.
Florian is a very strange man. Huh?
I think Florian has a little sense of humor, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. But, you know, they are, I don't know, they keep themselves in their own world, and I think it's very hard to get in. But listen, they were, for me, the most important thing I ever heard in my life. You know, I can tell you this. Listen.
Not for me, too.
Yeah. I mean, I heard Autobahn, and I thought, wow. They came to Liverpool on September the 11th, 1975, at the Liverpool Empire. I was sitting in seat number Q36.
Great.
It was the first day of the rest of my life.
Yeah. Andy, along your career, you have worked with great producers. I mean Mick Howlett, Red Davies, and Stephen Egg. Which one do you think is among these the real studio wizard, in your opinion?
You know, the funny thing is, we actually had problems with our producers because we had a very, very weird and individual way of wanting to write and make songs. And they... Rhett Davies did not understand us. Rhett Davies was a big mistake. I mean, we asked Rhett Davies, because we loved the sound of Roxy music, the albums in the early 80s. We asked Rhett Davies to do Dazzle Ships, but we asked Rhett Davies to do an album that he did not understand. So it was really very confusing. Probably the best producer we ever had, actually, was Mike Howlett, because he allowed us to do what we wanted, and he just had the patience, but also he was clever enough. He didn't change anything. He said, okay, you do that, you do that. This is not the way you normally make a record, but this is how you make a record, and this is your style. I will just help you to make it sound like a professional recording, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you that you can't do that.
Not trying to change it.
Exactly. Not change it. Just help us get the best recording of our ideas. So out of those 3, personally, I would say Mike Howlett was the best. Stephen Hague and I always had arguments. I hated working with him. He's a nice guy, but I hated working with him.
Okay. And then you also been in contact with Martin Hannett in the very beginning of your career, but it didn't work, didn't it?
Well, it didn't work on Electricity. His vision of Electricity didn't work. You know, the kind of gothic echo reverb. It didn't work. But he took our song Almost, which was a very bouncy little small pop song that went and he made that beautiful and echoing and romantic, and that worked. So he got one right and one not right.
Okay, it was a very strange guy. Martin Bennett.
Yeah, very.
I read some strange stories about him.
Yeah, well, we had an interesting time when we were working with him, and because Factory Records had no money, we had to mix in Strawberry Studios at night when nobody was in. Mm-hmm. And about 3:00 in the morning, Martin was so stoned, he just got under the mixing desk and went to sleep. Mm-hmm. And Paul and I were like, well, what should we do? Should we wake him up? Oh, no, I'm not going to wake him up. Well, and what should we do? We just sat there for about an hour waiting for him to wake up.
Very, very strange. So maybe not everybody knows the most experimental side of the OMD. I think to some things in organization or to your incredible B-sides collected in navigation, how comes in recent time you haven't recorded any more pieces like those? In the end, nobody ever associates you to the industrial sound, even though you made many things of the sort.
Yeah. When we made our B-sides, it was often the most, it was a wonderful opportunity because we had just spent the last 6 months with some new instruments, some new equipment. We'd made an album. We had, the single was finished, the album was finished. We needed some extra tracks. And now we had total freedom. It was carte blanche, anything we could do. But we had all these new equipment. We were still excited. So we just did the most interesting things. And the Navigation album shows you just how strong and wonderful and weird our B-sides were. I think that after Dazzle Ships, when that record almost killed our commercial career, it was almost, we went from 3 million to 300,000. We lost 90% of our audience.
But in my opinion, it's very, very strange because I think that in Dazzle Ships there are a lot of catchy songs.
There are.
It's very strange. It's very strange.
I don't know. I don't know whether maybe Genetic Engineering was the wrong single. I know that I don't know. I just don't know. But
so Telegraph, it's a very catchy song.
Yeah, it's very catchy. I know. I honestly, I don't know what happened, but we could talk about it all day, and we'll never know exactly what happened. But after that album, I think Paul was married, we both had houses, we had obligations. It was our job, and we had to be careful that we made some money out of it. And that was the beginning of the problem with the sound of the band. That's when we stopped just experimenting, just doing what we wanted. And so especially then the B-sides, we stopped really experimenting. However, what's been interesting is, with this new album, we started experimenting again on the bonus tracks. They're not called B-sides now, they're bonus tracks for the demo. And we had, there's a very interesting song called Idea One. There's a nice song called Alone, which is a good B-side. And interestingly, there's one song on the History of Modern album called New Holy Ground that was going to be a bonus. We were so excited about it, we just said, stop the album, we're putting this on the album.
Okay. And I would like to talk a little about charts. Yeah, you had a great success all over Europe, other than in UK, obviously, but maybe in the end lower than expectations in the USA. That's pretty strange because you were among the first who later generated the great British invasion between 1983 and 1984. How would you explain this? You had some hits, but not a great success like Human League, I mean.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing for us, actually, was that when our music became a little bit more conservative and traditional, the Americans bought more of it. We always used to make a joke. because we were one of the first English kind of synth bands to go to America. I mean, we went over in 1980, and 81 and 82. We always used to say it was a bit like D-Day. Mm-hmm. You know, when the boats come onto the beach and the first guys off the boats get shot dead. Mm-hmm. The next guy runs over the dead body and gets up the beach. And we felt like we were the first guy onto the American beach. We got shot dead by the American press. And then the Human League and Culture Club stepped on our dead body and went on to have success.
Okay. So I've read somewhere that in your historical production you consider Architecture and Morality as your best album. Of course, I find it a really good, great album, but maybe a little less courageous than the previous organization, and especially than the following Dazzle Ships. Do you agree with me or not?
I think if you really think about Architecture and Morality, it is just as strange as Organisation and just as strange as Dazzle Ships in its own way. But it had some very beautiful choral sounds and Souvenir and Maid of Orleans and Joan of Arc that maybe make people think that it was less experimental. Mm-hmm. But, you know, Sealand is a very strange piece.
Yeah, I agree.
Architecture and Morality is just music concrete, really. It's all just, you know. So I think, I don't know, you know, I'm not going to get into a discussion about which is the most experimental. I think that our first 4 albums were all the most wonderful things we ever did.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What kind of music does Andy McCluskey listen to nowadays? Do you like, and do your likes move in a different way from Paul's one, or not?
What I listen to now is my favorite album of the last year is Robin Body Talk Part 1. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, Robin Body Talk Part 2 is coming out this week. I like... there is a band called Au Revoir Simone.
Yeah, I know.
I like their album. Mm-hmm. But I sometimes still listen to old albums. I still like to listen to A Walk Across the Rooftops by Blue Nile. I love that album.
Great. Such a great album.
A great album. Yeah. And I still actually listen to, you know, my favorite album of all time is, and nobody ever understands this, it's by 2 Canadian folk singers, Kate and Anna McGarrigle.
Yeah.
Rufus Wainwright's mother, one of them. She just died last year. Yeah. That album is beautiful, and it's not in a style of music that I make, but their harmonies are so melancholy and touching and sad. So, yeah, there's some things I listen to. And Paul listen the same music or different, because at the beginning you heard the same music or not, and now. Yeah. Well, in the beginning we listened to the same music because I bought the records and he had the stereo.
Okay.
So that is, you know, the simple reason why OMD started is because I took my German records to Paul's house because I had a mono record player that sounded shit. He had made a stereo because he was into electronics. He made a stereo and I went to his house. Yeah, it was just a wonderful symbiotic relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the very last one. What shall we do to see you on stage in Italy? I've seen your agenda. You have so many tour dates all over Germany and not even one in Italy. You always have somehow snubbed us. How comes?
I would love to come to Italy. We ask if we can come to Italy. Okay. There is no agent or promoter will will get us to come to Italy.
That's
Nobody will give us enough money that we can come and do a good show. You know, we can come and do a shit show with a bad sound and no lights, but who wants to see that? If you know somebody who will get us to come and do a good show in Italy, we would love to come to Milan or Rome. I would love it.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay, listen, yeah, I would love to. We have not played in Italy since 1982.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that we haven't. Yeah, well, listen, if you know somebody, ask us. I want to come. We don't hate Italy, you know, we love Italy, but we never get asked.
Yeah, okay.